Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's February 4, 2019, and this is episode 649. Today we conclude our three-part series of travelogues to walk you through my 2019 Hokkaido Winter Landscape Photography Adventure Tour and Workshop. We pick up the trail as we leave Wakkanai and head around Cape Sawyer, the northernmost tip of Japan, making a few stops to photograph the fishing boats that are brought up onto the land to stop them from getting crushed by the sea ice. The high winds that they'd had shortly before we arrived in this part of Hokkaido had blown away the snow in some coastal areas, so there wasn't a great covering of snow beneath or around these boats, and unfortunately this was one of the days that we had an almost clear blue sky. I did a long exposure to try to get some movement in what little cloud there was, and it registered slightly just above the boats, but not much to speak of. Because there was a messy foreground, I cropped tightly into the bottom of the boats in camera, and I cropped down from the top to remove the boring sky in post. At this point, this is more of a documentary shot to show you what we were photographing, but I don't really like it that much as a photograph. My settings were 25 seconds at ISO 100 with an aperture of f20. I stopped down this far to get a long shutter speed. If I recall, I was using my 10-stop neutral density filter, but it was so bright I had to either stop down the aperture more or nest a 3-stop filter on top of that, and I went for the former option. My focal length was 50mm. We had a reasonably long drive down the east coast of Hokkaido to the small port town of Omu, where we'd spend the next 2 nights. The main attraction here is the small harbour, with some beautiful strategically placed tetrapods in the sea and the black rocks on the beach. In this first photo you can see the sea washing up around the rocks, but also the line of tetrapods reaching out into the sea to the left, and some of the other tetrapods in the distance. There's also a lighthouse on the end of the quay wall that adds a nice frame over the water and helps to bring the eye back around to the tetrapods. As the light was fading towards the end of the day, I didn't use a neutral density filter for this shot, and at this point, with the ambient light, I was getting a shutter speed of 1.6 seconds with an aperture of f16 at ISO 100. The focal length was 24mm. Another thing that we like to do from this location is to drive inland to see what the conditions present us with. As you can see from this shot, the grasses were showing through quite a lot again, but I enjoyed these scenes as they give us something to play with compositionally. The trough that we can see working its way through the snow in the left foreground is caused by a brook that has completely covered over with snow. The longer grasses are obviously growing along the stream as a source of water. I painted a mask over the sky in this to darken down the clouds a little. The shutter speed was a 50th of a second at ISO 100 and an aperture of 14 at 45mm. Towards the end of the day we were back at the harbour, and here I had framed up the 7 tetrapods that I sometimes think of as 7 samurai. I don't quite know why. Maybe I see these shapes like the kabuto samurai helmets. Also probably how they're just standing there calm and cool. I was using my 11 to 24mm lens for this shot at f13 with a base shutter speed of a 40th of a second, but I put a filter that I cut out of a sheet of gelatin neutral density film and had slid that into the holder on the back of the lens. It was an ND 10000 filter, which extended my 40th of a second to 4 minutes at ISO 125. As the snow that we'd hoped for more of started pounding down on the areas that we'd just left, we made our way to our final location for the last 2 days of the tour. Our first visit to the port that we start with was a bit of a flop. When we arrived, we had a beautiful heavy grey sky, but like magic, it cleared up as we got out of the bus and started shooting, leaving us with way too much contrast, making the boats look pretty bad. None of the shots from this shoot made my final selection. I was happy with the contrast that the sun provided at our second location though. And because the clouds were rolling across the sky, their shadows were dancing down the side of the hill that you can see in this next photograph. I played with a number of styles of shadows, and one of my favourites was when just the line of trees and strip of snow in the foreground were dark, but the hill brightly lit, and then all contrasted against the dark grey sky. I do like it when everything is very similar tones, like some of the shots from last week. But when the conditions don't allow for that, I feel it's important to be able to still make the most of what you have, and playing with these contrasts was very enjoyable, and I do like the results. I used a shutter speed of 100th of a second with the aperture set to f14 at ISO 100. I was using my 100 to 400mm lens for this shot, with the focal length set to 220mm. The following day brought us a little snow, so I took the group back to the fishing port that we'd visited and got harsh light the previous day. And as we shot, the snow started to get heavier and heavier, enabling us to get the sort of shot that I much prefer, with the snow visible in the scene. Of course, for this shot, I'd positioned my camera so that I was looking along the line of boats, and also went low to accentuate the small drifts of snow between the boats and their shadows, which helps to complete the feeling of the repeating pattern. My shutter speed in the snow was a 15th of a second at f14 ISO 100 and a focal length of 88mm. One of the reasons that I make sure we get 2 days in each location is exactly because of this kind of scenario. When you rely on the weather doing something specific and you only have one shot at it, you are much more likely to come away with nothing. When you have 2 days though, you can learn what the location is like on the first visit, even if the conditions aren't great, and then come back and get your shots much more efficiently when the conditions align with your hopes and expectations. This also gave us enough time to visit the tree that you see in this next shot, which I thought looked beautiful with its sprinkling of snow on its branches, but more so because of all the tall brown grass around it. The falling snow that we left in the port was, as I expected, relatively fleeting, but leaving when we did enabled us to get a dramatic sky in the background of this shot. But the snow gradually clearing up to the right caused the sky to brighten slightly, showing the transient nature of our conditions. My settings for this shot were a 50th of a second at f14 ISO 100 and a focal length of 35mm. I continued to be highly impressed with the image quality of the EOS R and found shooting with it throughout this trip completely enjoyable. As I walked back to our bus from the tree, the scene across the road caught my eye. I've looked at this many times and photographed it a number of times, but it's never really amounted to anything until the grasses showed through like they are in this photograph. Of course, in addition to the grasses, the thing that made this shot for me is the snow driving diagonally across the frame, reducing the contrast between the foreground and distant trees. This provides a painterly look that really appeals to me. In fact, I almost called this Turner Trees, but I figured that that was perhaps a little too pretentious. My settings for this shot were a 30th of a second at f14 ISO 100 and a focal length of 74mm. Because we'd also got more texture in the sky, we revisited the location that we'd shot the previous day, with the shadows on the hill, and this time I'd like to share an image of the scene just to the right of the earlier scene that we looked at. The sun was still playing games with the clouds, causing some dramatic shadows, but the texture in the sky really helped to add some drama to this shot. The texture on the hill, as the snow had blown away from parts, was also fun to play with again. My settings were f14 for 125th of a second at ISO 100 and a focal length of 263mm. By the time the final morning came around and we needed our plane to fly back to Tokyo, it was a relief that the snowstorms affecting most of the rest of the island were holding off a few miles north of where we were now, in the middle of the east coast of Hokkaido. The winds did provide some dramatic waves on the way to our main stop for this last morning, so we stopped the bus and shot this image from the road, capitalizing on the rough weather. I had now packed my tripod in a box to leave it with the bus company until the next tour, which I'll be halfway through when I release this episode. So I shot this handheld and, of course, turned my 2-second timer off so that I could time my exposure to capture the waves in pleasing locations in the frame. I also increased my ISO to 200 for a shutter speed of 100th of a second to help me almost but not quite freeze the movement of the sea. I feel that understanding how much things like snow and water move during the exposure can really help us to craft and mould our images into something that we can more easily pre-visualize with the help of these tools in our mental toolbox. That brings us almost to the end of my 2019 Hokkaido winter landscape photography adventure. As usual, I did my walk around the bus with a digital recorder to record a comment from each of our guests, and I'd like to play that for you now. So here we are at the end of the 2019 Hokkaido landscape photography adventure, and we're about to go around the bus and get a comment from each of the participants as it's become tradition. So, Char, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. Char Davies from Seattle, Washington, USA. This is my second trip to Hokkaido with Martin in the wintertime. Lots of great photographic opportunities, a great crew, well taken care of. I really enjoyed it. And if you're lucky enough to have bad weather, as in wind and snow and clouds, then the photography is fantastic.
Thank you. Nick. Hello, I'm Nick from Hong Kong. This is my third trip, and I've enjoyed it at least as much as the previous two. As Martin knows, I'm here obviously for the photography, but also for the whole enjoyment, the whole experience, and a very important part of that is Martin's team. Kaiwa-san is probably the best and certainly the safest bus driver on this planet. And Yukiko is, there's nothing she will not do to help to make your traveling easier. And if anything ever goes wrong, she's always there to assist. So the real question, of course, is whether I'll be back for a fourth. Well, the bookies will open the books on that in a couple of weeks from now.
Okay, well, you know, it's always great to travel with you. So, Robbie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, hi, it's Robbie. I'm from the UK. This is my first tour with Martin, unlike the two previous speakers. I've really enjoyed it. I've had a fantastic time. The area around BA, that was absolutely stunning. That was the area I came to see anyway. So I've enjoyed the rest of it, though. The organisation and the trip itself has been absolutely magnificent. I'd come back again.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Mal, can you say a few words?
Yep, g'day. I'm Malcolm Gamble from Melbourne, Australia. I highly recommend this tour. I think of the choice to go with Martin's been vindicated. It's more than just a landscape photography tour. It's an insight into culture, and I've really appreciated the flexibility and the customization in this tour. Martin puts his soul and his heart into this tour, and the locations are hand-picked and and you can see why people keep coming back to return to this tour. Yeah, I've really appreciated it. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Martin. What we got here, Dave?
Hi, my name is Dave Frumizo. I'm from Aiea, Hawaii in the United States. For me, I really enjoyed the Tori'i in the sea in Haburo. Since I signed up a year ago, I couldn't get that image out of my mind. And also, shooting the trees in BA was another highlight of the trip. I'd like to thank Martin and his crew for taking really good care of us. And also, it was really nice to be in the company of all these other very talented photographers from around the world. I made a lot of great friends. I'm already wanting to plan another trip back to Hokkaido with Martin someday, hopefully soon. I think you should sign up too if you haven't already. Thanks.
Thank you. Ryan.
Hi, name is Ryan Sakamoto. I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii. Very different climate. First time out in Japan. First time touching snow. It was amazing. It was totally amazing. Great tour. Very well organized. I think my most favorite spot was BA. The trees are so beautiful over there, with the right light and snow. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. Which side should we go here? George, do you want to like to say something?
Yep. I'm George Finlay from Wellington, New Zealand. The tour has been fantastic. The thing that I really appreciated, apart from being in fantastic locations the whole time, was the opportunity to shoot alongside and talk with some very talented photographers throughout the trip. So, many thanks to Martin and his team for putting on a fantastic experience for us.
Oh, Mike.
Hey there, this is Mike from Washington, D.C. Just wrapping up the Winter Landscape Adventure Tour with Martin and his gang. Special thanks to them for putting together a fantastic 2 weeks. I think my favorite spots were the trees at Mount Asahi in BA and the one or more boat graveyards that we visited. Could not have had a better experience. So thanks again. I would recommend this tour to anybody.
Thank you. Sorry, Michelle.
Hi Martin, I'm Michelle from Australia. First time I've done a tour with Martin. I recommend it to anyone. I think what I appreciated the most was how quickly Martin identified my fairly amateur skills and targeted all his interactions with me to enhance those skills. I felt I learnt so much. And thanks Martin, it was great.
Thank you.
Oh God. Hi, I'm Kate from Auckland, New Zealand. First time to Japan. Couldn't have picked a better person to come on a tour with and to experience Hokkaido with. Martin and his team have been amazing and I've enjoyed every location we've been at. Thank you.
Eric, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. This is Eric from Boston in the United States. I've had a wonderful couple of weeks with Martin and his staff here in Hokkaido. A highlight for me of the trip was photographing the isolated trees and blowing snow. I felt like I really had to up my game out in the field just to keep up with the conditions as well as the compositional challenges, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you so much, Martin, for a great 2 weeks.
Jose.
Okay, my name is Jose from Peru. I enjoyed very much all the opportunities that we had to take minimalistic photos in this Hokkaido landscape adventure workshop. To me, the highlight of the trip was the first part in which we had the opportunity to take photos of trees isolated and in a group against a pure white background.
Okay, thank you. Okay, would you like to say something?
I'm Kay from Sydney in Australia. The winter landscape in Hokkaido has been on my to-do list for about 3 years, and I'm so pleased I've done it with you, Martin. I think I thought I knew my camera well before I came. I know it's so much better now, having taken so many photos, well, all my photos on manual. I know my camera so much better. You've challenged me to take some much better photos than I originally I thought I could. You've made me think about my photography, and I'd like to say thank you, Martin, for a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely travelling with you. Jane, would you like to say a few words?
I'm Jane from Australia. I've really enjoyed the tour. The organisation was absolutely spectacular. It's the best I've ever seen on a tour. Really enjoyed your unique view of looking at things and the way you challenge the creativity and don't put us into some sort of mould of doing things the way millions of other people before you have said, do this, do this, do this. You've said, if you like it, this is good, I'd do it this way, but and I've found your style really refreshing and helpful, so thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the tour, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yep. Okay. Wonderful. Yukiko, do you want to say a few words?
Hello, I'm Yukiko. I'm from Yokohama. So this time I really enjoy the tour, and I greatly appreciate for all of the guests and Martin and Oikawa-san, every restaurant and hotels. Personally, I'm very sad. It is because my right lens was broken at the beginning of this tour. But next year, I'm looking forward to take pictures my new camera. Thank you very much.
Okay, so finally, I just want to let's just give our amazing driver down here a round of applause, and we'll wrap it up. Thank you. It was lovely hearing from each guest again there. I really appreciate their kind comments. Thank you all. As the 2020 tour is now full, I've started taking bookings for 2021, so if you're interested in joining us, please check out our page at mbp.ac/HLPA and use the reservation button towards the bottom of the page to pay your deposit to secure your place. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favourite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the soon-to-be-deceased Google+, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.